just quick kind of meeting protocol here. We're not going to go around the room and do welcome introductions for everybody because we worked here. I just want to welcome the kind of guest speakers today, and then go over the format really quickly. So really quick, if everybody kind of takes a look at my nameplate right there, it says, LTCC team member. I'd love for you to just kind of put, like for example, Michael O'Loughlin, English instructor, or John, faculty lead, or just kind of your roles, so our guest speakers knows exactly what you're doing. From there, we're going to get into the agenda that's being posted, and from there, I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off to Kelly from the Chancellor's Office and Katie from the Youth Law Center to introduce themselves, and I think that's it for now.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Kelly Nadler. I'm the Rising Scholars Regional Coordinator, and I work in the Salinas Valley, the Greater Bay Area, anything north of Sacramento, and with Bakersfield College. So it's kind of a random smattering of locations, but essentially I am the main point of contact for any community college in those areas who are working with our incarcerated or formerly incarcerated students. And I'm thrilled to be here with you all.
Hey everyone, wonderful to see you all this morning. I'm Katie Bliss. I'm the California Higher Education Coordinator at Youth Law Center. And Youth Law Center is a national law firm. We're based in San Francisco, and our focus is on human rights for children, specifically juvenile justice, impacted youth, and foster youth. And my niche area at this firm is to focus on higher education pathways for community colleges and to support those efforts. So all the work that you're doing at Lake Tahoe is really exciting. Prior to my role at Youth Law Center, for the purposes of today, I actually taught English at the College of San Mateo for 8 years, and then for 5 years created a program that focused on young people making the successful transition from juvenile detention to community college and on to transfer. So great to see you all today and excited to talk more.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate you both for joining and look forward to hearing you both talk later in this meeting. All right, let's just get right into it. For the purposes of today, so you don't have to really hear me talk the whole time, once we get that agenda finally sent over to Bruce, he'll be kind of prompting us and moving us forward through the meeting. So Bruce, thank you for that. So I don't know if that agenda has been posted yet, but I'm sure my team is figuring it out. Yes, Michael.
Admitting to the fact that my math isn't the greatest, I added up the time on the agenda. It's 4 hours. It's a 4-hour agenda. I'm not sure you're noticed that. We did, and it is a 4-hour agenda because we have no clue what's really going to happen with talking to one of our students today. We have a detained student at the juvenile facility, and we're just kind of leaving time buffer on each end. I do not expect us to go 4 hours. No one wants to be on a Zoom for 4 hours. All right, thank you, Michael. Sure. All right, I'm going to there's the agenda right there. You all have seen it, and I'm just going to go get right into the kind of report that I have for you all today. All right, I take it everybody's seen that. Okay. Really just kind of wanted to provide you with a 100,000-foot view. I could talk for probably 2 hours straight on everything happening in ISP last year's through COVID and everything. So I am not going to do that. Really, the purpose of today is to hear from the Youth Law Center and really get a faculty focus on how we want to move forward with the ability to offer online education to our youth facilities. And some people have already heard a little bit. We have purchased a Canvas instance for ISP. CDCR has said that they are going to allow some access for online education. So we're really just kind of stepping ahead of this and really focusing on how we can provide access to our juvenile facilities at El Centro High School. They have the ability to access computers, but that's really the purpose of today.
Let's get right into it. Really quick, course rewrites. I feel that it's pertinent right now because there's funding at the Chancellor's Office to receive reimbursements for any faculty that would like a textbook for their course or wants to do a rewrite in alignment with a new textbook. I was able to advocate for about $24,000 last fall, and that funding has been reallocated, and it's first come first serve on this. So if you have a course that you would like to have rewritten, please talk to your faculty chair or your dean. Review the stipend language in your contract. There's links in this, and I'll provide this presentation in the chat as well. But then also, please check out this course modification tracker. So we're just staying ahead of who wants to revise a course, and the books that you're really wanting to purchase, so we can get ahead of it a little bit more and start forecasting those changes. Just because, as you can tell, your sections are filling up. Our students are eager to take courses, and anything that we can get ahead of for planning would be optimal. So thank you. Course success rates total. Now I did major fall quarters. Of course, we don't have fall 21 yet, so I just went with winter, and we're definitely seeing an increase in that. So that's definitely a positive. And then our enrollment summary, I went with fall because that's our greatest predictor of what the year is going to look like. But of course, we don't have a fall 21, so I went with our current spring quarter. And really what you're seeing from 508 to 267 is us following up with our students, or 627, dyslexia, there we go. You're really seeing us really trying to follow up with our students that fell through the cracks during COVID. We really, with the help of Reggie and Amanda, we really identified a lot of our students that fell through the cracks, and we were able to re-enroll them. So those aren't new students that were enrolled, students that had fallen through the crack that we recaptured. So what's happening in CDCR, and you'll hear this later from Kelly as well, is kind of their roadmap to reopening, their visitation memos that they send out probably 2 or 3 times a week and redo. And then, so we'll be able to enter as fully vaccinated or asymptomatic without a negative test. Mask is required, but Kelly will talk more about this lately. But really, it's kind of going to be up to, and if I understand correctly, like at local control of the wardens themselves. So really working with our 9 individual facilities to see where we can access and how we're going to be able to access them. Our students are wanting to see our faces, and frankly, I want to see theirs. So we created a ISP Canvas instance. CDCR also has its own Canvas instance, but there's some loopholes that we're going to have to run through. And I'm not banking on a rollout by January 2022. That's their kind of forecast. But really, I would say, let's get into it today and really talk about what an ISP Canvas instance looks for our juvenile facilities, because I think that should really be our focus. It'd be, here's the differences in that. I'm not just going to go through and read it all, but and then we have student spotlights. We have 4 students that have released and are now currently our online course online offerings. If you go back to the State of College address, fast forward to 1342, Miss Baru is still at UC Sacramento, and she's doing a great job. We checked in with her a couple weeks ago, and she's working with Project Rebound there. So definitely a proud moment for us to see her just keep doing great work. We had one student that was granted parole, actually, from High Desert State Prison, because of his continued positive programming with Lake Tahoe Community College, and he made president's list, and the judge made that as part of the condition of his parole. That student is also an online student and finishing his statistics course, I think in the spring quarter or set up for fall quarter. And with COVID, we didn't really have the ability to offer speech or art. But now with the ability to offer speech and art, we're looking to have about 15 to 20 graduates this spring quarter alone. So we're very excited about that. And a lot of our students are starting to transfer to four-year institutions. Just, the last 2 weeks, we've been going back with Lancaster State Prison, trying to get transcripts for a few of our students there so they can go to the Lancaster four-year program. Specifically, a couple student highlights. This is Mr. Thomas. Bruce, you would recognize this face. He graduated while he was at High Desert State Prison, and then while he was detained, he was actually a peer mentor. So helping other students at other colleges get through the college program with the dynamics of CDCR. He reached out to us upon release, and I'd love to get him to one of these meetings. He just has the most calming voice when you talk to him. And he has actually received letters of recommendation from us, and he is trying to go to UC Northridge right now. And we're really excited for him. And, for our team, it's always bittersweet when you're able to talk to that human on the phone upon release, because that's something we don't always get while they're incarcerated. So the ability just for them to email us and talk to us on the phone just kind of brings a smile to our face. That's really, like I said, the view of what's happening right now in ISP, and I can go on for hours in that, but we're just going to get going. Any kind of quick questions regarding anything that I just presented? Raise your hand or just unmute, please.
Shane, I just had a quick question. On the slide where you were talking about the Canvas shells, on the LTCC side, it said that student-to-student chat will be enabled. Is that accurate, or is it disabled and then
disabled typo?
Oh, okay. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking it's probably unlikely they're going to be able to talk with each other, but the faculty will be able to provide feedback, you said.
Yeah, the faculty will be able to provide instant feedback directly to the student. And in this instance as well, we can get around that kind of student chat feature by having Zoom tutoring sessions. So the location will support our ability to have tutoring sessions, and Wynn has kind of already hinted to us that she wants first up on that. So
great, thank you. Yeah. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. And a link to the presentation is now in the chat, and we'll fix that tech on.
Shane? Oh.
Yes.
Hi, sorry. When you were talking about the rewrites for the classes, I mean, like, if we're using OpenStax, that's what I was going to be using. Are you guys going to want to prefer to buy the book? I buy the book for OpenStax for business. So, or is the college going to do the thing of printing more materials? What is the preference with that?
That's great. So for OpenStax, we still will send that to a third-party binder and get that bound in a professional way with a Lake Tahoe cover. Sarah Pierce did something very similar.
Right. I mean, if we're actually using this is the OpenStax, textbook for business. So would you rather that, it's a $40 text? I mean, OpenStax, is that rather what you guys want to do, or in something else? So I can talk to Tori and get the details, since I haven't done it before.
No, that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked in front of everybody, because of course we want to support any kind of OpenStax free resources like that, but we do want to send it off to get it bound as a book, opposed to printing it every quarter.
Right. That's what I just wanted to know. You probably want something that you can pass along. Okay, that'll keep
even with
durability.
Even with that, we'll still be able to get reimbursed for that, and we have in the past already for it.
Right. Okay. Cool. Okay.
Any other kind of questions? All right. I think we're moving. We're just, let's go ahead and just get right into, Katie, let's go. Would you feel comfortable going up right now?
Yeah, sure. So let me just share my screen with y'all. Great. So again, great to be here. It's really exciting to have the opportunity to share resources with all of you, practitioners and leaders in this space, to create and expand pathways to higher education for our student scholars. And so today I'm going to plan to share with all of you an overview of the current historical moment regarding California's juvenile justice landscape. And this resulted from the passage of SB 823, which is the closure of our Division of Juvenile Justice, California's youth prison system. So that's closing. And there's funding realignment efforts along with an overview of the juvenile justice system. And the purpose of that is to have a goal of highlighting that there's really unique opportunities present at this particular moment to create and expand college programming. So before I jump into the presentation, typically I like to share with everyone a little bit of student voices. We don't have that opportunity today, but I'm going to be sharing a video hopefully at the end if we have time of some of the students that have been through the program who can share some of their experiences with all of you. So what's happening right now in California? Under Senate Bill 823, the DJJ realignment bill, the California Division of Juvenile Justice is closing state facilities. It's shifting responsibility to local counties with funding, which can be accessible by you and the community colleges. And in particular, this bill affirms a commitment to reducing the use of confinement by using community-based responses and interventions. And it calls for counties to implement a public health approach to support positive youth development. So this community-based alternative approach is uniquely aligned with the opportunities that can be made available within community colleges. And this offers chances to engage in these discussions in your communities. And although I don't have enough time in this presentation in particular to talk further about SB 823 and the possible resources that you all might look into for your own programming, we've done a few recorded presentations. I'm happy to share those presentations with you upon request. So while there's a tidal wave of change happening in juvenile justice, we want to draw attention to the resources and frameworks that are tied to our California Community College vision for success, and that are especially relevant to creating and growing out opportunities to support students with juvenile justice experiences. These resources and frameworks listed are uniquely valuable to juvenile justice students based on a variety of factors. There's a crossover population of students as foster youth, and additional categories listed under equity. However, spotlighting foster youth as a specific area when working with these students with juvenile justice experience, I'm going to share more about this in the next section of the presentation. Also, their age is typically 15 to 25. Their education status, the vast majority are still in high school, which gives an opportunity for early outreach prior to their first year of enrollment at the community college through dual enrollment or a guided pathways framework while they're still in high school. So you can create multi-year pathways with secondary through post-secondary through graduation, degree, completion, transfer, and these students will get dual enrollment for their first year status, which also potentially could qualify them under California Promise. All these items I'm going to share about a little bit more later in the presentation. So for this next part of the presentation, I'm going to share with you all just an overview of the juvenile justice system. I know a lot of you work with folks in the adult system, and there's really unique aspects to the juvenile justice system different than the adult system. So just for the purpose of helping to identify some of those pieces to help all of you kind of think through as you develop and create and grow out your programming specifically geared towards supporting these students. So youth in the juvenile justice system are youth, just like any other young person who has needs, hopes, desires. There are, however, a few ways in which the overall youth population in the juvenile justice system is quite different from the picture of the youth population in the US as a whole. So disproportionately youth of color, the incarceration rate of California for California is Black youth are almost 10 times the rate for white youth to be incarcerated. Latinx and Native youth are also disproportionately incarcerated. There's a huge overlap with foster youth, which again, I'll identify multiple times throughout the presentation, just because when you're working with young people, that's a very particular group. So by age 17, over half of youth in foster care have experienced an arrest. An adjudication or an overnight stay in a detention facility. Also, youth with disabilities. And these estimates range from 30% to 80% of youth who are in juvenile detention facilities. Additionally, LGBTQ youth. 20% of all youth in juvenile facilities identify as LGB, and almost 40% of girls in juvenile facilities identify as LGB. So this next portion, just want to highlight that youth in the juvenile justice system often sit at the nexus of other vulnerable populations that policymakers and educators care about, but this stacking of multiple identities as well as stigma of being justice involved means that sometimes they're overlooked, they're turned away from services that really should be including them. So when we're talking about foster youth, youth of color, undocumented youth, we're talking about prevention. So making sure that these youth don't get sucked into the school to prison pipeline, which is extremely important, but there's less momentum in our state and quite frankly, the nation for talking about, well, what do we do with these young people who are already there? So this is why your work at Lake Tahoe is so valuable. The other thing that's useful to know about the juvenile justice system is that the vast majority are there for low-level offenses, the kinds of things that are actually more likely to be classified as crimes if you're poor, live in a certain neighborhood, are non-white. There are status offenses is what they're called. So which are things that would be not considered crimes if you're an adult, like truancy, refusal to obey parents and guardians, violating curfew, and so on. So these are criminalized for, typical adolescent behavior in many ways. There are a few takeaways here. One is that we're locking up a lot of kids who are just kids, who need connections to positive peers and adults, a clear pathway for their futures, and connections to basic needs, holistic support services. As many youth who end up in juvenile justice are kids who are reaching out to try to navigate trauma. So many of these things are what community colleges are capable of providing. And the juvenile justice system punishes youth, and especially Black and brown youth, for normal adolescent development. So something to think about when we're looking at the huge landscape of the juvenile justice system is that there's a universe of players. When creating community college programming for young people impacted by the system, the three most central players are the County Office of Education, the Juvenile Court, and Juvenile Probation. So most folks think of juvenile justice as a pipeline where juvenile hall is the endpoint. There's a way in which that's true. When we think about the juvenile justice court process, you start with initial contact, which is arrest. You move to adjudication, which is trial, and then to disposition, which is sentencing. And at the end of the process, if you're adjudicated or found guilty, the judge makes a placement order, which could be to the juvenile hall. And the juvenile hall is both a place where you await trial, just similar to jails. It's also a place where they could be committed, also known as sentenced, just like the prison and jail. Most youth are in juvenile hall for just a few days or a few weeks at a time. Again, that's kind of a unique aspect of working with young people in the juvenile justice system. So in between periods of detention in juvenile hall, youth could go from home to a foster care placement or sometimes to some other system placement, like a regional center or a foster care placement. And the exception to this is this constant movement is actually DJJ, the state youth prison system that, as mentioned earlier, is actually going to be shutting down. So for the most part, youth who go to DJJ have been there for longer term commitments. And, again, juvenile hall is a revolving door, and especially for youth who are placed in foster care, because foster care isn't just one place. Youth might cycle between different family-based placements and group homes near or far from home. And as juvenile hall continues this revolving door, every time a youth moves, they change schools. Again, this is a highlight with this population because we're talking about adolescents and high school students. So they're moving around, changing schools. So not only are youth experiencing constant changes in where they sleep and who is or who isn't tucking them in to bed at night, they're also experiencing constant disruptions with their education, both in terms of what they're learning and their educational supports in terms of their peer and adult relationships. So youth in the juvenile justice system are a highly mobile population. They're moving in and out of facilities and placements. And community college can be a youth's first opportunity to experience stability that they need to grow through various programming and holistic support services. You might also want to look at where do youth go when they leave the juvenile hall. So youth are supposed to be able to return to their home school, but in practice, they are often pushed into alternative schools. And so I'll just take a moment to flag here that when youth are pushed into alternative, or also another language term is continuation schools, one of the reasons is that they're behind in credits, which makes sense, right? They've been moving in and out of facilities and so on, so they get behind, and all various other reasons. And there are, of course, differences between alternative schools, but it's very common for alternative schools to have youth complete their education through completing packets or clicking through e-learning platforms. And so I'm going to touch on this again later, but actually dual enrollment with the community college instead can be a way to offer meaningful credit recovery opportunities for these young people. So youth in court and alternative schools are often left out of school districts' post-secondary planning. And they're not part of the conversations. We don't typically in this state have our community colleges and these schools talking or having recruitment there, but community colleges have an opportunity to change districts' minds about what's possible for these students. So as we move to the final portion of the presentation, I just really want to reemphasize that we're in this really critical space and time with juvenile justice system change, movements to address racial injustice, the need for positive and holistic services for young people at this essential stage of adolescent and young adult development. And the California community colleges and all of you at Lake Tahoe Community College are uniquely situated to be a key centerpiece to this alternative model. As discussed, there's this revolving nexus of the juvenile justice incarceration system, child welfare system, and court and community schools. And the programming and supports that you've all created on your campus communities are really changing and disrupting these cycles to instead create a universe of education, holistic support services, basic needs, leadership opportunities, and a community of positive peers and adult mentors that's rather centered in strength rather than deficit. So when working with students impacted by the juvenile justice system, there's valuable stakeholders and key partnerships that make this vision possible. Each group has an essential role to play. And these stakeholders include, I mentioned earlier, the County Office of Education, which specific to the juvenile justice system is the educational body overseeing school for these students when they're in detention facilities or in the community or our system involved. As mentioned, like the community schools or alternative schools. So unlike jails and prisons, youth have a legal right to an education and are required to be in school. And the County Office of Ed as a community partner can help creating dual enrollment courses for the high schools on the college campus or the detention facility. And I'm going to talk more about this coming up, including partnering with school districts. And again, different than working with the adult population where you may partner with the sheriff's department, parole, or other such entities. When working with youth, you're going to want to connect with your local juvenile probation department because students in juvenile justice are highly mobile in their entry points to the system. This collaboration may be referrals to more direct work with MOUs or offering programming inside facilities. So your students also may be connected to a community-based organization, and partnering with one in your local county can offer opportunities for them to provide referrals, be a collaborative partner for elevating students' leadership skills through advocacy or internships, career pathways. There's a whole, wealth of opportunities with community-based organizations in your area if you're not already partnering with them or want to expand that. And so under the Vision for Success goal of the California community colleges with a focus on equity and access, there are resources and frameworks listed that are uniquely valuable to juvenile justice students and certainly should be for the goal of ensuring these students are provided every opportunity towards degree completion and transfer. And so with the headline being completion and equity, a structure that embeds each initiative in place for these students flips the paradigm from these students from being behind to being ahead. So when you're working with students with juvenile justice experience, you're working with students who've been pushed out and excluded from educational attainment. So designing this multi-year model that includes a student equity plan with juvenile justice students, specifically identified foster youth, undocumented students. There's a lot of crossover populations with a guided pathways framework that can include dual enrollment for early outreach, clear and direct paths for majors and degree transfer completion, potentially a California promise for first year support. This can accelerate student success. So our students with juvenile justice experience are an umbrella population representing much of the student equity categories. And so to return to a spotlight on foster youth and transitional age youth, this is a unique category to identify when working with this group of students because of their age. We know the crossover is huge, and utilizing equity funds, you can use, CAFE grants, and connecting to already existing campus programming is a best practice. So many of you currently work with the adult population of students, jails, prisons, and although there are some areas here where there is relevance, the purpose here obviously is to specifically draw attention to and highlight the initiatives and practices that are suited towards youth and juvenile justice. So guided pathways, dual enrollment, which both have a focus on early outreach and partnerships with local high schools, are clear examples. So when centering your program with an equity mindset, the guided pathways model and dual enrollment opportunities provides these students a multi-year support system that begins as early as a student's junior year, when they can be taking dual enrolled courses and both working towards credit recovery. And many of these students are deficient in credits, right? So high school, this also helps with high school completion. So while also working towards their college pathway, and dual enrollment is free. So dual enrollment courses are free for students, and when using equity funds too, this can cover textbook costs. And so you could have young people 15, 18 college credits deep before even starting their first year of college, at which time they can enter the college through the guided pathways framework, a clear major pathway for transfer, and potentially combined with other student learning communities. If you have a Guardian Scholars or Next Up or a Puente or an Emoja program or any of these various learning communities, and only have 40 credits left before degree completion transfer, while having the students save money and have access to a full network of holistic support services and a pathway towards their future goals. So with the community college frameworks previously discussed, another angle to think about these structures is also through the multiple entry points one can jump into to be able to serve these students. It's also a possible way to frame your program when working with community partners and outside organizations, because we're talking about working with people who are as young as 15. These initiatives like guided pathways and dual enrollment can be opportunities to intervene before the justice pipeline even begins. So to wrap up the presentation, I just wanted to return to the student-centered space of aligning this work with a focus on students' success being embedded in equity and their needs, which is highlighted in the above column, and below a synopsis of the ways the California Community College Vision for Success initiatives align specifically with serving juvenile justice impacted students. And again, thanks everyone for letting me come and speak to you all. Would love to answer any questions or clarify anything. I'm going to leave the student videos out for now, but I'll add that when we share out information. It's just really cool to hear from them. I'll just briefly share that some of the students that have been through, the community college program that I was doing at the College of San Mateo, they started with us when they were in high school, went through the Juvenile Hall, taking classes, then transferred to the community college. Now they're at UC Berkeley, UCLA. One of them is graduating in a few weeks. Really exciting. They're at San Francisco State. They're all over the place, right? They're partnering with your folks, with Project Rebound. It's a whole network of young people. And these things that you're all doing to get started with serving youth is really exciting. It's so rewarding. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Katie. Appreciate that. Is there any kind of questions we have for Katie? Anyone? I see Sarah. She's on it, man. She wants to get after it. Get it, Sarah.
It's kind of just a broad question for you, Katie, but I was just wondering if there's any kind of anything we should be really conscientious of with working with youth that's different than we have had some last couple quarters in there. And I've definitely tried to check my biases and says, but if they say they're 16, I think I know I give them a little bit more leeway maybe, and just want to make sure it's a super positive experience for all students, but definitely for those students that are younger. So I just was wondering if there's anything that, in your opinion, that we should be aware of or conscientious of when dealing with, your presentation talked about their demographics and all that, but is there anything we need to really be hypersensitive to or about?
Sure, I love that question, Sarah. And, I think when it comes to with the pedagogy and the way you approach students, it's just the way you approach, in my, opinion, I guess just the way that I did it when I was teaching students too is, if you haven't taught dual enrollment and it's a different age, of course, there's, unique considerations with teenagers. But at the same time, I think what I've noticed with the professors who have been working with students is that when these young people are treated just the same as any other college student who are first-year students or third-year students, then they rise to that challenge. That bar is set and they want to meet that. And I guess the unique aspect of that is that traditionally, especially young people who have been in the juvenile justice system, as mentioned with this nexus that they've been involved in, it's very rare that they've had the bar held high for them. Right? They've been in alternative schools. They've been pushed around into different spaces. They've been given packets for learning. They haven't had direct instruction from passionate educators who care and ask questions like that and want to engage them. And so when I think I've seen students and when I've heard students provide feedback, that's one of the biggest things that I think stands out is that having professors come into a classroom and professors alone, right? That's a big message to these students too, is that you're college ready. We believe that you're a college student and now you are a college student. And here you have, a professor who's teaching you this material and engaging you, asking questions, getting you to provide feedback, which again, I think it's been a very top-down model that a lot of these students have experienced where educators in K through 12 in, these alternative and continuation schools and in the court schools are just, and that's not all of them, of course, but let's just be honest, traditionally, it's just, here's the information, shh, and listen. So I think those are things to consider, but be the awesome teacher, be the awesome professor you are for these students. It's a real gift for them, if that's helpful. And then all the other pieces about foster youth and which I'm happy to share more about or send to all of you too, if you want to learn more about those crossover population pieces.
Looks like we have a few hand raised here. Amber, did I see your hand was raised virtually?
Yes, thank you. Katie, that was wonderful. Thank you for giving us an update on just the pulse of the policy and the moment and also the uplifting stories I think everybody likes to hear a lot. So thanks for all of that. One question I have is we're kind of moving into serving more youth. There'll be challenges associated with, creating sort of internet accessibility, like making Canvas shells be student to teacher interactive. Are you aware of, you may not know this at all, but are there any repositories or groups where instructors who are kind of about to tackle that challenge can look to just look at best practices and ideas of what's worked? Since we're kind of really on the forefront of all of this, I'm just wondering if you know about any resource banks or groups, anything like that that might be helpful.
That's such a great question, Amber. And actually, so there's two spaces that are a network of folks who are sharing information. And yes, all of you are at this forefront of creating juvenile justice programming. It's not typical. It's a brand new frontier really in the last several years. And so as you all engage in this, you're going to be, really also able to share with other folks, hopefully, what you're learning. And as other people are doing this work with you, they're sharing this information out too. So I'm going to put the networks in the chat. One of the networks is the one that Kelly leads, and that's the Rising Scholars Network, which I know you're all a part of. But if you're not on the listserv itself, then that's a great resource to be connected to. People provide lots of information about what they're doing when it comes to questions like this about Canvas shells or about making sure that the material is applicable to a particular group of students and so on. In the juvenile justice sphere, where it's very focused on that only, actually at Youth Law Center, we've created what's called a Pathways practice exchange. So every month we do monthly webinars. We have a listserv of folks, which is a compilation of stakeholders across the state. So you'll see, you'll have faculty who are doing this work with juvenile justice specifically. You'll have administrators, there's probation folks, there's, community-based orgs. So it's a big group. But I think that information might be helpful as you dive in further, and you can share it. I would love for you to share that question out to our listserv actually and get feedback because I guarantee you people have the same question as you. So thanks for asking that, Amber.
Okay, looks like we have Amber Goligoski's up next with a question. And after that, we're going to transition to turning off our recording. And we are going to chat with one of our current students detained at El Centro High School. Amber, you're up.
Mine's more of a clarification question. So as you go through this, you've been talking about dual enrollment. But my understanding of dual enrollment is that it's a little more complicated to get the courses approved, that there needs to be a credentialed teacher that also meets the community college minimum qualifications. Is concurrent enrollment an equal option, or will these all be dual enrollment courses?
That's another really good question. So just as an aside, right now, one of the biggest barriers with dual enrollment, especially for this population, is that CCAP agreements are required, and county offices of education, which, as mentioned, is if any of these students are in juvenile detention facilities or they're at these quarter community schools, they're usually under the umbrella of the County Office of Ed. And County Office of Ed has been left out entirely of CCAP agreements, which are needed for dual enrollment courses. We right now at Youth Law Center are sponsoring a bill that is moving that forward, and it's going to pass, by the way, for sure. So that'll be happening in the next few months. I'll provide updates to folks who are interested. But part of this too is individual colleges navigate this differently. And so this has been successful, I know, at several community colleges. So I'm also happy to, if this is of interest to you, because I'm kind of just providing also, here's some really cool possible frameworks that exist within our, California Community College Chancellor's Office Vision for Success, and aligning that. And I bring that up too, just, because it's also a great funding resource as you're trying to create programming, and you can link it to these things. Dual enrollment has multiple benefits. But when you're navigating these things, I think it's helpful to connect to the colleges who've done it and done it successfully and can provide that feedback. And then in addition to that, as this bill rolls out, then that's going to open up the door also specifically for this population to be more easily accessing dual enrollment. But I believe, I imagine at each college campus too, there's somebody who's overseeing dual enrollment. And if you're not already having those conversations, and again, each program, also your program may look very different, how you're structuring it, what you decide to do as a team. But that might be a great conversation too. What possibilities are there? What hurdles do we need to navigate in order for us to do this, if this is something that you all decide is a framework you're interested in?
Great.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up? I'm sorry, I don't want to stop us from seeing talking with the student, but could you also let us know, maybe when you provide us contacts with some of those other colleges, are people crossing district lines, or are they just working within the juvenile system within their district? Because we do have a CCAP agreement with our local unified school district. And I'm just curious if we are trying to serve students outside online, we might need more information about creating agreements with outside of the district.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michelle. My understanding of the programs that I'm thinking of right now likely work within their district, but I don't actually have the expertise to know what that looks like when you're crossing over districts and what things you'd need to be thinking about there or what's possible. But also happy to, provide feedback or, share out if other people have more information about that. But that is my understanding of the current programs, which doesn't mean that that's not possible for you all. I just actually don't know.
Great. Thank you, Katie. I always appreciate your presentations and your thoroughness. Thank you very much. All right. Let's just keep cruising. Julie and Barbara, hi, how are you? Julie.
Hi, Shane. Sorry. we just finished a graduation and it's really crazy in here right now.
Oh, no worries at all.
So we're still trying to get the computers and everything all set up. And Barb's actually she's logged in, but she's not on yet.
Why don't we do this? Let's everybody take a quick 5-minute break, stretch your legs, get some water, and then we'll allow some time for your guys' technical because we're all looking forward to seeing and speaking with you.
Awesome. Yeah, because I was gonna say the kids aren't even in here yet, so I think they're about to go pick them up. So I'm gonna double check, but I think that's the plan at the moment.
No worries at all. We'll take 5. Yeah, we'll be back in 5 minutes, everyone. So let's call it 9:50. Thank you.
On the top, it says on the top, it says 1 of 7. If you arrow over, it brings you to the next one.
Thanks.
And that should get it to you. But in terms of getting this started, I don't know that I have any specific comments at this point regarding issues with CDCR or things that we can do to resolve them. But I will, I see Kata's got her hand up. So go ahead, Kata.
Hello, everybody. I have a general question. I have a student requesting extra information about a grammar topic in a regular ISP course. And I would like to know if I can do that, or what is the procedure, or what I need to do, or if I can do it or not do it. Because when I'm in a face-to-face class, I answer the question and I do the same thing in a DE class, but I'm not very sure what to do in an ISP class. Thank you.
Yes, Kata, great question. This has come up a couple times, so I appreciate you asking it. Yes, of course, we want you to provide that extra material. We just don't want to learn about it when a location is saying, hey, you had a professor provide extra material to a student and now other students want it, right? We want to be able to help you through that because, there is CDCR protocols of for example, if you did it for that one student and you didn't do it for any other student, CDCR could twist that around to say, oh yeah, no, you're being over familiar with this one student. So we just want to be able to help guide that faculty through the process and just and be aware of it beforehand instead of after.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. It's okay if I send the material to the student and then share that handout with Tori or you? Is that okay? Or should I send an email asking you for permission about it?
I don't want any faculty member to ask for permission to help our students get along. Get through the course. I would say provide that feedback within the module, or if it's time sensitive to that actual module or the midterm, like if it's module 3 before the midterm, we can send that to the location digitally. But really just kind of working together to bring it to the student. We have had a couple instances where after the material was already sent, we found out about it and, the location was concerned about it. So I had to prepare a statement. That's kind of the the CDCR side of the house of things that I try to protect us from. And really, it's not that we're trying to censor you whatsoever. It's the fact that just, we need to be working together through this.
Okay, I will send the handout to the student in the module now, and then I will email that to Tori and copy Elizabeth and you on that email.
Great, thank you so
All
much.
right, awesome. Thank you for answering my question.
Of course. Trevor, you had your hand up, and then you put it down. Are you okay? Sarah?
I was just gonna piggyback on your answer to that, and maybe I know CDCR might twist that, but if any student would ask me a question on my office hour in DE or in face-to-face, I would always go out of my way to give that student extra information. And if another student would like to ask me that same question, I will give he or she that same information. So I think that's a good response to them, because I have in past practice in the last 6 years I've been doing this. If a student asks more information about the Aztec or the Maya or acentuación, accents, I absolutely send them a handout. And I am sorry if I haven't been sending those to you, but if a student's asking for more information, I want to reward them with that knowledge. So if that's something, I don't want to bombard the office, but it's at least happening. It's happening quite a bit for me anyhow.
That's great news. I'm glad it's happening, and I'm glad you're communicating with them. And I have told them that exact same thing. You know what they tell me? Shane, your DE and your face-to-face students aren't incarcerated. So, I mean, that's really it. It's kind of their domain, their kitchen. And we've done a very good job, and Bruce has seen it, firsthand, is talking with those locations, those custody officers, those wardens, to know that, we are doing what's best for the safety and security of the location, but also our students' learning, and just, and having that, knowledge that that's being provided. It really helps out when a custody officer asks us why we're sending extra stuff, it's just the knowledge of it. Keep doing it. I dare you to do more.
And what about if we offer maybe in our syllabus a statement that says, if you have a question about a particular grammar concept or whatever, please ask on your office hour forums, and we will try to provide you more feedback. And then that way it's listed in our syllabus. And so all students are available to ask for more.
You would be doing us a solid by.
Sorry, Trevor, I just totally jumped you.
That's okay. I think it's good. I mean, I guess it's just, Shane, I'm kind of getting back into the ISP stuff with, going back to the business department. I plan on, obviously being super engaged with it. But I mean, we just all need to be aware that, just thinking about the faculty's workload and that kind of thing. It's like some people really go out of their way and they find all these extra materials and, peer-reviewed articles. And then all of a sudden you've got to remember, oh my gosh, I've got to also send this copy to, and I understand what you're trying to deal with, but let's just, if we can try to a process or some type of a thing that maybe is just a repository that is, I don't know what to do with that, but there needs to be kind of a set way to get the information that it's being sent back to the student, to your group. I understand that, but not just putting that all of a sudden it's just one more thing, for me to make sure that, I saved if I print it up at home and I put it in their packet, like, oh gosh, I've got to make sure I get this to the, ISP department. So I'm just kind of putting that out there as a faculty of that. I mean, it is going to, if a process can be created, that's going to be more streamlined, I guess, so that we don't overlook something and not provide it. And then you guys are getting, questioned and that kind of thing. How can we work for everybody?
How about I provide a process, and then I give it to this kind of Trevor, I'll show it to you for feedback, and then I could bring it to Academic Senate to have that process solidified.
So I think one of the biggest issues that we all face is that we are really used to having 100% control of what's going on in our classes, right? I mean, think about it. When I'm in my calculus class, I am God, right? I mean, what I say goes, what I do goes. And so we're really used to that. That's not how it works with ISP, right? Like all of a sudden now that, yes, Bruce Almighty, all of a sudden now there is another entity that is telling us no, you have to think about this. And I know that what I've done just for myself mentally is to go into all right, I'm going to go with what I think is best practice. if I'm met with resistance, I'm going to tell them, I think this is best practice, but I also am 100% on board with, but if they say I can't do that, I can't do that. Because I'll tell you what, the way that we're teaching math is not best practice, not even close. However, I've adjusted things, and I've been really pliable and allowed myself to adjust things to try to make it work as best as I can in the framework of that system. And so my best advice to everybody in here is just to realize that you're never going to have the control that you have in your regular classes when you're dealing with CDCR. And that sucks sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, God, you guys are really making this so that the students are getting screwed over. But at the end of the day, I can't do anything about that. All I can do is try to change and within their, I was going to say conform, I don't conform at all, but to adjust things so that I'm within their framework, but still trying to get as best to my students. And so I just see this as a recurring thing that comes up in these meetings, that we keep having these discussions. So I just kind of wanted to bring up that perspective because it's really evident when you're in there. Man, when you're in the facility, talk about having zero control. Like I've no control in there whatsoever. At the drop of a hat, I'm out of that room, right? And so I think that's really helped me with the broader teaching of these classes to realize that you got to play the game. You got to play the game, and there are ways of playing the game where you can still win even though the rules are set against you. So and if anyone would like ideas or advice, reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you guys about my experiences. But anyway, now I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to stop. Tori, I see your hand is up. You want to take the next?
Well, I'm not sure if Kata has a question or another comment. I was just thinking that your comments, Bruce, about your experience teaching within our program and the limitations that just CDCR and our student population bring. And then, of course, asking you for any suggestions, which thank you so much for offering that up. Our next Jamboard kind of might be a good venue for brainstorming ideas. If you guys click to the next Jamboard, it's a question about, what ideas or how can we bring LTCC's ISP to the next level of excellence. And while we all kind of can foresee or have experienced these limitations and challenges, that might be, this might be a good way to kind of prompt other ideas, not only from Bruce, but, anyone else who's currently teaching or have been working within the program to share those ideas as well. But Kata, if you had a question from the previous, please feel free.
I'm good. I don't know why it stays there.
Well, I definitely have a topic or something to discuss on this one. And I know that I've brought this up a couple of times, and I know that, again, with the, I'm getting pressure not from CDCR on this one, but I think we need to change our schedule. I think we need to not try to go with business as usual, because it doesn't work. And I noticed some people mentioned this in one of the previous boards, like it with the time, and there's always going to be time delay, even when we have scanning and things like that, it doesn't work. And I would really love to get our college on board with the, we are doing 2 ISP terms instead of 3 during a regular academic year. Summer, I'm going to leave summer as a completely different thing because, with the compression there. And I know that there are issues with like reporting of classes to the state, and most of the pushback I hear comes from like A&R in terms of like reporting and legal things. But there's got to be a way that we can adjust this. And I know another issue with this is with faculty, right? How do we figure out load over terms or things like that? But how we're doing it needs to change for it to be successful. I would say that's one of the bigger issues I have. But Amber, I see your hand is up.
I just want to echo that, and I don't want to get into a big, impossibility conversation, but there's obviously a context of complete unpredictability that we are dealing with given CDCR that, Bruce, you surfaced, Shane constantly reminds me of. But I wonder if, knowing about that context, we could consider at least having the high vision level conversation about an alternative reality with respect to the schedule. One thought I had is, given that, the feedback we got from the students, it is so helpful to them, even, creating some gap between the first two modules, making those due sooner or something, so that they can then have time to iterate and to change. I often find that my students are submitting module 4 and they may have just gotten my module 1 feedback, and that's just, it's not ideal. And I know, totally realize we have a context that we have to work in, but I guess I just want to echo what you're saying about maybe at least having a conversation about, possible different schedules that might at least allow for the feedback to get to the students a little sooner, given the kind of mailing piece. But I don't know. I know it's a much larger conversation. I can't get that we can't do it overnight.
Michael, you're up.
And I'm just echoing Bruce and Amber. I was just thinking in terms of what's going on right now. Shane said earlier, reminded me that by mentioning the midterm date, it's next week, I still don't have module 2s. And midterm is module 4. And I know it's tough. What do you do about it? There was a suggestion, start it 2 weeks earlier, but then wouldn't we end it 2 weeks earlier? I know the solution is not easy, but I really agree with Bruce. We just have to flat out say, this doesn't work. This is purely a correspondence course, and maybe they should be taking a midterm until they get the feedback from 3. Of course, that makes all the grades late, but this structure, it's just not working, at least in my experience.
Shane, may I make a comment, please? I don't know who's in the queue here. I can't see a queue, and I tried to see it. My hand. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Appreciate it. I probably mentioned this maybe a couple years ago. To Bruce's point, and what's already been said by Amber and Michael here, is that the merging of bureaucracies is always problematic. And I think that if anyone has the ability to adapt more easily, it's us, because they're not going to. Which I've often asked the question, because for people who don't know, when I was in Illinois, I taught in the Illinois Department of Corrections and went to the facility twice a week to teach a class for a community college as an adjunct, or part-time instructor. But the point I'm trying to make here is, I think that we could adapt on our end so that it would flow more smoothly. And so I would totally support what has been said here, if we could find a way to make that work in the faculty contract, as Scott Lucas has commented here. If we want to do that, we could do it. It's the question is, do we want to? So I think we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, JD. Treva?
I was just going to say that there was some work being done on the whole idea of terms and that kind of thing at the Chancellor's office already, that related to that 115th online college, because they were trying to propose, the idea of the traditional, semester quarters and those types of things. So I don't know if Michelle, if anyone wants to look into that work, because there was going to be allowances made and some things at the Chancellor's office level for that particular college, because they were trying to serve non-traditional students. Different programs could be condensed. I mean, I don't know what kind of footing that really took, Michelle, if you know much more about it, but I mean, so some stuff was being done. So maybe it's on piggyback on that conversation for, like we said, the, different, the ISP programs throughout the state. So just kind of throwing that out there.
I can speak a little bit to what you guys are talking about. I think we have more flexibility than we're aware of in terms of term lengths. We're not really bound specifically to a 12-week term in terms of how we offer our courses. We are bound by a certain minimum contact hours. We're bound by the course outline of record. and we're bound by the academic year in the sense of how we count apportionment and credit. But we have courses that we're offering through other partnerships that maybe start, and even dual enrollment courses, right, that start in the fall term, but maybe don't end until winter sometime, or, start in the winter, but end in spring, or they're 2-day courses, or they're, even our FEC is open for 12 weeks over the summer, not 6 weeks that we do our regular terms. So we have a lot of flexibility in terms of spreading out the material. That I don't think is really the problem. I think the real issue is the faculty workload and where it falls, I think, and in terms of being able to manage, obviously ISP, I'll just maybe the elephant in the room is that ISP is a huge FTES generator for the college right now and is really supporting some declining enrollments that we've seen in other areas. And so if we go to different term lengths, are we going to also reduce those FTS? Are we going to be able to serve fewer students, or are we able to kind of maintain that, not just for the apportionment side, but also for the student side? Are we able to keep the number of students that we have if we change to maybe just 2 quarters that are on a longer period? And I think really the problem we get into, or that we've had up to this point, is when faculty material doesn't come in until after the regular term is over, and then faculty are kind of still working on those courses into the next term when they've started new courses. But really into the summer is where we get into difficulties too, because we're crossing into an academic year. We're also crossing into a summer, which is not a term that typically full-time faculty work. So I think those are really more of the issue than creating new term lengths. I mean, we can be creative with our term lengths without too much trouble, as far as I can tell.
And, kind of, Sarah, I'll get your next on this one is, we aligned to the traditional quarter based off of faculty feedback from this meeting from 2 years ago. And so if that's, I'm really trying to get ahead of it. If this is something that, you want us to reimagine the term length and the quarter system, this is something we definitely work on, and happy to do that. Sarah?
Yeah, I think, I really don't think 2 terms, in my opinion, I don't think we need 2 terms. I've talked to Amber at length about how I've recreated my modules so they make sense for my students, for me, for my feedback. The biggest problem, I think, for us is that it's not the term lengths. It's that I'm not getting work until the 4th week. So if I were really getting work week 1, week 2, I don't think it would be a problem in Spanish for just speaking about Spanish. I don't know how the other modules, I think there is, they're definitely on the topic. We need to talk about recreating some of these modules so that they're feasible for instructors to grade that much at times. It's just, to me, it's really not 12 weeks when you talk about what we're receiving. It's really like 7 weeks, with the majority of the work coming the last 2 weeks. So I was actually the one that put the sticky note 2 weeks earlier, because I was thinking if we can get the work to the students earlier, then we're able to start receiving feedback, or getting our modules earlier. And then, so it doesn't seem, because it's either feast or famine is what I've experienced, right? As far as grading goes, it's like, I'm either going to get 3 modules or 43 modules. And so that's what's difficult. I think it's been on the faculty side, is I don't know if it's more work or less work, but it just feels overwhelming, especially towards the end of the quarter. So my suggestion was, if we keep it 12 weeks still, but we start it 2 weeks earlier, we're getting work by the week 1 or 2 of the regular quarter. And then by the end, we have that last 2 weeks to kind of wrap everything up. And if there's a lockdown or anything, we have a little bit more times before grades are due. I don't know if that is a possibility, Michelle, but in my opinion, I think we can definitely still go. It's just the time that the work comes in is so unpredictable, with a lot of work sometimes, where you know, you kind of just got to mentally prepare. I tell Amber, when it comes to my mailbox, I get a little like heart palpitation. How many am I going to have? It's, you know, where in other work at the college, I think it's a little bit more predictable how we can receive the feedback and then grade. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'll Kata, I see you've got your hand up. I think when I'd like to revisit with Shane, I know that there were issues when we had it. We were distributing 2 weeks early so that the students, we expected the students' work to kind of come in on that after that first 2 weeks when the faculty then would start officially. But I'm not sure we did make the shift. Part of it could have been, and Shane, you can speak to this, part of it was maybe about the challenges of distribution and kind of aligning the distribution with the quarters and all of that. But there might be an opportunity to revisit that. I'm not sure. And then Kata, you had something you wanted to share.
Yeah. So when I teach ISP last summer, something that worked different from the regular courses that I teach is I posted the grades before I have all the student work. And then I needed to switch some grades later because I received the other modules. My concern is, especially for this population, if you have an A and then you receive the work later and go from an A to a C, I think it's demoralizing for some of them, I think. And that's I don't know if always work like that, or it's because I work on summer and then I post certain grades, and then when I receive the rest of the work, I adjust those grades. And I can't remember well what is the form. Tori, can you help me with this? It's a changing grading form, I think.
Yeah, and Kata, that summer quarter was a lot different back then with COVID and the delays and the challenges that we were facing. We do have a lot of grade changes, but we've also kind of migrated to a new process for if we know student work is going to be delayed, we can actually ask instructors to put in IP in progress grades, because then we can track those a little bit better than grades that were submitted and we're not sure if that's the final grade and if it needs to be updated. But to answer your question, that was a grade change form. And what we've done with the in progress grades is, we've submitted rosters to instructors and said, hey, if you are anticipating a grade to be inputted at a different time after grades are due, put in, an IP on this roster. We'll work with Raina and Enrollment Services to get that inputted. And then once we can track student work coming in and we can identify that, okay, students X, Y, and Z's, their modules 5, 6, and their finals have come in. Hey, let's follow up with the instructor and say, okay, it's time to maybe update those IPs to final grades. So we have worked with instructors quite a bit in the last couple quarters with the flexibility of not being able to grade everything by the time grades are due in the system. And really it is a challenge, but I feel like at least this last winter quarter was a huge improvement from the previous fall and summer quarters, with just the delayed work coming in because of the COVID specific related issues. But yeah, absolutely that summer quarter was quite interesting. And so we know that there were a lot of grade changes, and I think everyone in our program can agree that if a student was given an A or a B initially, and then, their last bits of work came in and that dropped their grade, that could be disheartening for the student. Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that there are changes. That's good news. Thank you for answering my question.
I'd just like to reiterate, Tori, that I've been since the beginning of this program, and there have always been grade changes. I think it's the nature of the student population that we're dealing with, but I will agree that from fall to winter, I have had less, and students, there are definitely less students submitting late work, and I think you're doing a great job on your end. I just have to say that. I mean, managing us as the faculty and then the CDCR side, I really think it's getting better, but I think an adjustment of the schedule dates would really help everyone involved, the students receiving feedback and then us as well. So, but I think you're doing a great job, and I think it is getting better, and we're responding to these changes, and it's definitely happening less in Spanish. So thank you guys for your work.
Great, thank you. If there's any other suggestions, just please put them into this Jamboard, and Troy's going to progress us to the next Jamboard here.
As you're going forward, Tori, I put some of the data points in. I didn't put my initials on. I think it would be really helpful for faculty to kind of get more information about how students are doing in ISP. I mean, maybe you have an idea of your own courses, but I really love the idea of kind of having a broader view with the data, especially in terms of the equity work that we're doing as a college and looking at maybe some of the disaggregated data. I also think, I know that when I was gone in the fall, I know scanning became kind of a question, and could that speed up the transition? And I would encourage you guys to maybe go to ISP, the offices when they're doing distribution or when they're receiving work in, and look at some of the formats. I just think that it became really clear to me that on an individual basis, we could probably do some of that and have it work. But when I see the volume of paper that's coming in and out of the office, and some of it's in packets, like, folded workbooks and things like that, I'm looking for other kind of turnaround ideas that maybe are not tied to the scanning idea. Because while I think that is a great idea, like they were saying for maybe office, or Chris was saying for office hour forms, things like that, probably not feasible to do it for all the homework. Now, that being said, if we can get some Canvas incidents, and if we can get to more of an online environment, that may be a way of electronically moving work back and forth and feedback back and forth. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out, because I know that's something that Jeff has really picked up on as well, because he wants to really support kind of the faculty need for quicker turnaround of the work coming in and out. But I'm hoping we can be even more creative about maybe some of the ways to get that turnaround faster.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. And actually that can kind of be a segue into our next Jamboard. So if you all are still on the Jamboard, you can click to the right using the arrow on the top. And it's what strategies are being used that are particularly helpful for grading and providing student feedback. So timeliness and turnaround time is, of course, one of our priorities. We heard it from the students this morning about the importance of getting instructor feedbacks quicker. And so since we have our group has shrunk a little bit since the beginning, but if we can have our instructors post their best practices or ideas that they've come up with, things that are working with you and your students, just to share those ideas, and then also to kind of bring the ISP team up to speed. So if other instructors who aren't here right now have questions, we can, pass on the great information. I see the comment about, looking at the module dates when you're receiving work. And we here in the office recognize that a lot of the times when you folks receive your student work, you're getting bundles, maybe modules 2 and 3 at the same time from a student, or vice versa. And so one idea that we've come up with in the office that we're trying to pilot, and we would love your feedback on this as well, is trying to organize those student modules when we mail them out to you. So they're organized by date of the student completing the work, and then by alphabetical order. So if you have, 6 module 3s, we're gonna organize those by the date the student completed the work, and then in alphabetical order, so it might help you track your roster and your grading. And then if we had another set of module 3s coming in with that same batch, but they were received or completed later, those would be a little bit farther back. Or if you're receiving modules 2 and 3 at the same time from the student, it'll be in a more organized fashion so that you are looking at the work in the order that the student completed it. So we talked about that We've talked about that here in the office as an idea. We don't know if that would be helpful for you guys, but these are sort of the things that we're thinking of, and your feedback on these Jamboards will help us kind of generate more ideas of how we can improve our systems.
I think that's really nice, Tori, but I think that's too much for you to do personally. I mean, we can sort our own modules and look at those dates. The dates are provided for us on there. You know, I mean, I don't think putting more work on you and organizing those, I don't know if it's worth it for you. I mean, that's just my personal feedback. You're already doing such a great job. We got to get them. And, you know, I think scanning is a great idea, but I don't know how many people, what percentage of the ISP faculty are out of the area. But what's the percentage, Shane, of that faculty that don't teach, that are not from Tahoe? Because those are the only, Vicky is, yeah, I see you, Vicky. Because other than that, I think that the mailing out, you're getting it pretty quickly as long as you're checking your mail often.
Yeah, and we have our mailboxes back here, and Chris and I were just thinking, it's probably half, if not maybe more, because even if they're in somewhat of the local area, they might not be coming to campus right now because campus is closed. So one thing that we like to offer up, and it's always available, is if you are a local instructor, you can come by. I know I see a few of you on here will stop by. We have that distribution office in the front of the library where we can leave modules for you to pick up, and then you can drop off your graded modules in a safe distance fashion right now. I think in the beginning of the quarter, there might have been a survey that went out for if you're, in a semi-local area, but not within the direct basin, like maybe in the valley somewhere, we could try to consider a drop-off kind of route, like have a staff member take the truck or the RAV with the modules and kind of plan meetup spots for those that live in like the Carson Valley area. So yeah, I mean, we are always open and willing to work with instructors. Those that live out of the area, we do mail, and that seems to work fairly well. Sometimes instructors need to have things scanned for a period of time, and we will then scan the student work. And while that can be cumbersome for in some aspects, that is a solution, and we can help get student work to you as quickly as possible if if the situation arises. So.
All right. I'll go ahead and, because everybody has the link as well, I'll share the bits of the faculty survey that, some people filled out, and go ahead and share that for common practice as well. And then I'll make sure to go through all of our governance processes, just informational, letting everybody know about the common practices that we came up with in this meeting. If you have any other common practices, please put them in there. I think, Tori, go ahead and progress us to the next one here. It looks like Amber has a hand up. Sorry, Amber.
Sorry, really quick question. Just sort of reflecting on how useful it was, at least for me personally, to hear from the students. I'm just thinking of IRB and I don't know legal issues, but is there any way we could deploy some type of survey to the students to see, like, I'd love to hear the specific type of feedback that is valuable to you that would allow us to sort of retool all these rubrics and best practices that we're coming up with. So to both laser in on what's helpful to them and then to be more efficient in our grading, given that we're scaling the program up and there's such demand. I guess my question is, do we have the ability to survey the students in any way to get feedback from them specifically on grading, or is that not something we can do?
Every spring quarter, we give out a student experience survey. We didn't last just because of COVID, and it was just a mess and we couldn't keep up with it. But this quarter is definitely in our interest to give that spring experience survey. And if you'd like a little hand in that, tailoring the questions to more faculty focus, happy to bring you in on that.
Okay. So these boards, as we move forward, are still available to you. So if you guys come up with any other comments or suggestions you'd like to add, you can always move back in the Jamboard by navigating those arrows. But oops, reload. Let's see. Moving on to the next, we would just love to find out and hear from you what motivates you to do this work. Why are you working within our program and teaching the student population? I think we all have our reasons, but we'd love to see them on this board if you're willing to share.
And just because, we've been going for 3 hours, I'd say let's end on a positive and let's say what motivates you to do this work, and our team will stick around to answer any other questions, but go ahead and put in what motivates you to do this work, and we can debrief it, and you guys can have a good day. Allie, I'm looking at you. I definitely need to see a Post-it note from you here. Thanks everybody for your participation today. I know 2.5, 3 hour Zoom meetings are not easy for anyone. So thank you. Go outside, get a stretch, enjoy. Me and my team will kick back if there's any other anything else you would like to add. Totally, Trevor. It was cool, wasn't it? I instantly saw him, and then I saw you smiling, and I was like, oh, that just made my whole day.
I turned my camera off and I went to go because I just got that work from them. So I was like, checking the name. I'm like, this is, and then I saw the initials for the facility, and I'm like, yeah, this is the student. So anyway, that was cool.
I get a message, a text, maybe once a term from Sarah Pierce with a picture of a student comment on a piece of work that just makes me just weep. I mean, the students are so appreciative of, and it's not about the savior complex or anything. It's just I think feeling that, you're connecting with a student in some way that they haven't had an opportunity to connect with an instructor before. And that means something to them. And when they express that, it means the world, I think, to me, and I know to you as faculty. That's why I think having even more, like, we get the anecdotes, we get the individual student stories, which are so important, right? And to hear from those students, it's so important. But I want to see the big picture too, I think, and we can see what real difference you guys are making, not just in 1 or 2 students' lives, though that probably is enough. That would be enough for me as an instructor, but really across the board, even if the students are not able to stay with us because they're transferred or they're released or they're moving in some other way. But I just think that's so important and so meaningful.
And it makes me think back on the first meeting we've ever had before we even adopted ISP, when we were talking to Feather River and they were saying, how could you really feel you know, the education is going to help a student if they're incarcerated for life, or for example, you know, how is it going to elevate them to in their lives? And I remember I always go back to this moment about there was a fly in the person's cell and the student's cell, and they thought about how the fly lived and just change their perspective about the world. And I really, every quarter at least, it's not like I'm like, okay, what am I going to send Michelle? There's always at least one per quarter that talks about either identity through, I've never thought about my identity this way after taking this Spanish class, or gosh, I always thought that all Aztecs were Mexicans, and just really powerful learning is going on and changing of hearts. And that's why I do the work. And every time, even if I have a pile, my mom calls it my small midget, you know, it's my small human that gets bigger every single time, that just keeps growing. Then I grade and I go, okay, then I teach and I say, this is so meaningful. This work is so meaningful. And we have to remind ourselves not to get bogged down on the dates, because the work we're doing in ISP, I will say it every day of the week, is some of the best work we're doing at LTCC. I mean, I believe that with every fiber of my being. So it's pretty exciting. So I'd say, and I think that's pretty cool, Shane, that like everybody that comes on is just, you know, the team for ISP, that we're really in the state one of the best, and that just it's because we're collaborating together. And thank you for bringing us here, because we keep inching towards the top, till the tippity top. So it's pretty exciting. So thanks, Michelle. Yeah. If anybody else wants some of I'll just retract the names and send you on my trail of my positivity of the quarter. But I send some to Amber too, I think.
Thank you, Sarah. That's huge. We really appreciate it. Lindsay, you have a comment?
First off, I'm so sorry I'm late. I had a kid with new contacts get infected this morning, eye drops. Anyways, I am so sorry I'm late. And I'm super new, so I really enjoyed hearing everybody's perspectives. And so I have a question. Maybe this is more geared towards Tori, but so I received my packets the first, couple of weeks, and I had a ton. So I graded all of them and I sent them back. One was returned to me because the address labels weren't correct, and I didn't realize that. And so I assumed I was going to get like a couple of more packets, but I didn't. And so I have a packet sitting here, and I thought I was going to get more packets. So I was just going to put that packet into, hopefully that's all making sense. So I was going to put this graded packet in, and I haven't gotten any new packets. So should I just meld this one separately? Because now it's been a couple of days and I haven't gotten any new ones, even though the first couple of weeks I was getting like a lot.
Yeah, that's a great question. And hi, Lindsay, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So we here in the office try to get student mail out 3 times a week at least. That's typically a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so I don't know. I imagine that we mailed something to you this week, if not once, twice already. We try, if you want to mail that back, that's an opportunity, it's an option, but we also don't want our instructors to pay out of pocket. So there's a really good chance that another packet of modules is going to be coming your way with a return, and you can just slide that one in. If you've been holding on to it for, for too long and you want to just get it back to us, we can connect afterwards and talk about other options rather than having you mail that. You can possibly scan it over to us, or I'll be happy to work with you. But generally speaking, you should be getting and expect to get a couple of packets a week of student work. But with what we've been hearing from instructors and what we also know in the office is just it can be unpredictable sometimes. So and now that we're kind of a few weeks into the quarter, we're starting to see that regular kind of flow of student work coming and going. But with just one particular class, we can't guarantee that we'll get student work on these days for this class and so on.
Right. Okay. I just kept thinking packets were going to come and they didn't. And now it's been like 5 days, which is, I think originally they wanted, return within a week. So now I'm going to be approaching that week. And so I don't want the students to be like, oh, well, she just gave up on me or whatever.
Oh, no.
Okay.
And thank you for being so conscientious and aware of the turnaround time. We really appreciate that. I just remembered that there was there was a situation on campus here with the college where we couldn't get mail out for about a week through our mail services department. Some were dropped off to the post office with like little posted stamps, and I wonder if that's one of the ones that returned to you. But we are happy to announce that the mail is back into its regular flow. So you should be getting some work soon.
All right. Well, I'll keep it for another day or two, and then we'll see.
What do you teach, Lindsay?
So I'm teaching public speaking.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
So it'll be interesting to see how, because I'm used to an online format of public speaking where students, record a video and I watch them, but it'll be different, I think, obviously with the incarcerated student program, because it's not like real time, or they're not seeing my face, or anyways, I've only been doing it since like the beginning of April with Lake Tahoe. So I am I feel like drowning a little bit, but then swimming and drowning a little.
Well, be flexible, and I'll put my email in the chat. And if you have any questions, I have been doing this for quite a few years.
I went back and I read what do you guys call them? The jam sessions. So I went back and I read throughout while everybody was talking. So anyways, contacts are good. Eye is still intact. So everything is saved now for my 11-year-old, but yeah. Anyways, thank you.
Amber?
I apologize if this is already something that exists. You guys all know that I'm rounding out my first year here, so I'm not aware of all the things that we're doing, but just, owing to the success of all this, do we have any kind of alumni network where we can kind of track students can touch back in while still on the inside and maybe on the outside? I just think it'd be really nice if we could be collecting these journeys, because I think that's such an amazing part of the whole program and would also provide community for the students. I just wonder, do we have something like that? Have we thought about doing something like that maybe?
We frequently have our ISP students that have graduated and released come back for like SOCA. I think the last 3 SOCAs we've had a ISP student. This go around, we're trying to get Mr. Thomas to come back and actually walk with us because he had an incarceration graduation. But yeah, I mean, it's really more of an ad hoc basis. Like we do as a college really need to step up our post-incarcerated services. Right now, the team does a really good job of working with students before their release dates, trying to help them out with counseling sessions and navigate academia and upon that release. But, it's something as a college that, I even put into my program review is that we definitely need to, work on that.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. Don't feel like you have to. The meeting is done for the day. We are just chatting, and we will repost all these Jamboards and bringing us all the information gained through governance. So we really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane and team. If there's a way to clone Tori, that would be great. That would be my one big suggestion is we need more of her. But thank you. I really appreciated all the input and hearing from instructors. Since I don't teach myself, it's really nice to hear how things are flowing and working for other departments and teachers. So thank you.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. It was my first ISP faculty meeting, and it was wonderful to see all your faces, to hear from all of you. And I think it today really spoke volumes to the community that's been built around this work. And I loved hearing from all of you. I loved hearing both your challenges and your proposed solutions. And I just appreciated that everybody took the time to really come today and commit. So thank you.
Well, if you have any questions or follow-up, me and the ISP team are always available. And I think after I'm done talking, unless there's anything else, Elizabeth will end the meeting.
Shane, I would just say the Jamboard question in the chat is a great one from Treva, that if we can share it with the faculty who were not able to be here for their input, that would be fantastic, I think.